What's wrong with you people?
Welcome to Not Another Baptist Podcast. This is your now beardless Matt Hensley, joined as always by Kyle, non-alcoholic beerman, who is also moderately beardless, so he does still have that nasty goatee, but all God's people are called to pursue the Great Commission, and that includes Kyle, that includes me, and that includes you. So if you are looking for theological education that includes both academic rigor and hands-on ministry experience, we suggest Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Whatever theological foundation you need, they'll help you build it. Whatever ministry experience it takes, they'll help you find it. And wherever God calls, they'll help you get there. Whether you're just beginning your journey or have decades of experience, Southwestern Seminary is committed to helping you live your calling. Learn more at swibbits.edu/admissions. And Kyle, I want to say this in faith. By the time this goes live, the Astros are up 3-2. But I'm not so sure.
All right, there you go. You made the call.
Here first. Actually, though, I will say, here's what's crazy. It's like I have a list that I created on Twitter where it's all of the Astro follows that I like, either some of the podcasts or the players or the beat writers, all that kind of stuff. Where I can keep up with that when I want to, but it's not on my feed. That's left for like the 10 people that I don't have muted. And so anyway, I went to there, and before the series, it was like all of them, their name was like Astros in 4, you know, Brian McTaggart or whatever. And then they lost game 1 and everybody changed it to Astros in 5. Right now, of course, we're recording this on Wednesday morning after we got just straight shellacked by the Phillies. Everybody is Astros in 6. And then I think some are already really panicking. But man, the Phillies atmosphere, from people that were there, I think they're saying that kind of the media is kind of hyping that up a little bit, that it's no different than other games that we've ever played on the road. I mean, we usually get the loudest of all boos of any other team for obvious reasons. But I think it was pretty clear that whatever Lance McCullers was doing last night was not working.
That dude was tipping his pitches in a big way. And
now, if you're Zach Greinke, you can get away with like telling them like exactly what I'm about to say. Lance McCullers, not so much. It was just batting practice. I felt like it was a home run derby. In fact, set a record. That's always good when you're on the wrong side of a record. But we digress.
Familiar with that. Been there lots of times as a Rangers fan.
Done that as a Rangers fan. However, how one point that you can get a little bit of satisfaction is that a Ranger won a World Series game.
Yes.
Rangers Suarez. Completely unconnected to the Rangers as the organization.
That's enough. I'm a fan.
It was named after the nearly world champion Texas Rangers. So first of all, quickly, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, it is November, so you know what that means. Christmas music has made its appearance.
I've joined you in that. I will say that I'm going to have like a 4-day moratorium on Christmas music from Thanksgiving through probably Sunday. I'm going to take a break and I'm going right back into it. But I'm all in on the Christmas music.
So I actually broke my rule. So typically November 1st, the first Christmas album that I listen to
I want for Christmas is you.
Is the Robertson Family Christmas, the Duck Dynasty guys. It's awful and I love it. And so that's usually like that's just kind of become my like kick off the Christmas season. However, our friends at Chosen Road released a Christmas album last week, and Appalachian Christmas. And so I broke my rule. I listened to that one through one day last week. They have some really cool special guests. Guy Penrod, who's, if you know, are the vocal band.
Gray-headed Jesus.
Yeah, and Point of Grace. They brought Point of Grace onto the album as well, and so it's a lot of fun. It's all
Points of Grace.
Yes, it's on all the streaming, all the streaming platforms. I encourage you to go check out Appalachian Christmas by Chosen Road. There's a free plug for you this morning. But yeah, Christmas season is in full blast here, and getting ready to start decorating slowly, kind of we'll do that over the course of many days here.
Yeah.
But looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. Well, it is so good to see you. And this is one of the first that we don't have a guest on for a minute. We've had a few guests, but in my world, let me just say this: Jared Cornett, one of the co-hosts of Potluck podcast that we normally share on Tuesdays, recently had a baby. Charlotte, I think is what they're calling her. So probably going to be a Lottie is going to be my guess. Actually, I know that. And but I sent them a little word of encouragement. And so for the parents that are listening in, particularly those maybe with little kids or with teens, or maybe those that have now left them out of the nest or sent them on their way or just gave up and like just go. This is just a word of encouragement for you, and it says this: if you're struggling with your toddlers now, don't worry. It changes. Not for good, though. It actually gets worse, way worse, like horrifyingly worse. I hope this helps you. So, on that note, Kyle, it's good to see you. We're doing well, and I'm actually leaving today. We're recording this on Wednesday. I'm about to go to Irving, to MacArthur Boulevard Baptist Church for a church planting assessment with the North American Mission Board and the Southern Baptists of Texas Convention. And so looking forward to that. I get to do communication because clearly I'm an expert at that. Expert at what not to say in the pulpit, most definitely. But anyway, looking forward to a time of equipping and assessing and so forth there. But we're not talking about parenting. We're not talking about the World Series, thank God. And we're not talking about really even church planting. But in church revitalization, there are a few things that we need to consider for ongoing work towards revitalization. Because Kyle, one day, the church starts growing, and then suddenly you're like, oh, wait, we're stagnant again.
Yeah.
What did we do? What is going on? You kind of get in a rough patch, or maybe you feel like you kind of get stuck in mud a little bit in the ministry along the way, because we talk about the life cycle of a church on this church planting side. Talk about birth and growth, then eventually plateau, stagnation, decline, and then death. And so maybe your church saw some growth and saw some sparks of life, and then you've hit a little rough patch. And so we want to talk a little bit about revitalization and in some areas that we can change and address to keep it going.
Yeah.
And so, Kyle, let's start. I think you actually wrote this article.
Yep.
I don't know why they published it, but anyway, there are 4 areas that ongoing revitalization is a reality in your church, and the first being buildings and facilities. Let me just give you a quick example here. If your church was built in like the 1800s, like First Baptist Church Hogwarts, there's a lot of change that's going to have to happen to your building. And so some of this is going to be obvious. Some of this is going to depend upon where you're at. Maybe like at First Alamogordo, you had too much building for what y'all were doing, and the upkeep was a little overwhelming. This we're even dealing with the Collin Baptist Association. Our building is in disrepair, and we're just bleeding money into it to ultimately come to the point where we're going to sell it and move into a mobile work environment. But anyway, let's talk about buildings and facilities first. I've talked too much, Kyle. Save us.
Yeah. So I started with this one not because it's the most important. Buildings are certainly not the most important thing when it comes to your church and your ministry, but they can also be easily neglected to the point that they become a burden, and then they begin to suck money and resources away from other ministry that could be done. So if you are in a position where your building is a burden, consider some ways to relieve that burden. Right now, so sometimes that's moving, sometimes that's selling the building. I think a trend that we're going to see in the next several years is multiple congregations meeting at a single building. So right now, for instance, at Highland Baptist here in Lubbock, we have 3 churches that meet on our campus on Sunday morning. We have we obviously Highland Baptist. We have a bilingual church called Grace Church, and then Matt, we have a Congolese church that meets here as well. And so we have three churches that meet in our facilities. I think this is going to become more and more of a reality as building costs skyrocket. We've talked a lot, in our culture right now. There's a lot of talk of inflation, which means, I mean, it's not only can buildings get out of repair really quickly and need to be fixed, but the cost of addressing those things is going up. So you lose an air conditioner, that's not a cheap fix. And then just kind of the ongoing maintenance of paint and carpet and the wear and tear that happens from a building that's hopefully being used more than just one day a week, right? That where ministry is happening throughout the week. And so this is going to be an ongoing reality in the life of the church, that there will always be something to address with a building if you want to keep it in good shape and not let it get to the point where it's going to be unmanageable.
Yeah. And I think one kind of pro tip here is it might not be bad to get maybe your pastor friend up the road or just somebody else that doesn't regularly go to your church and just do a walkthrough. Because one of the things, especially if you've been there, like when you first went into that church, you probably noticed some of the stains in the ceiling tiles, some of the stains in the carpet, or some of the areas where the paint was peeling, whatever it is. But you're there for a while, and it's kind of like that old sermon illustration that people use with the frog and the boiling water. It's like, if you see it and you just are dropped into it, then you see that stuff immediately. If you're just kind of boiling with it and kind of getting old with the building, you may not notice it. And so sometimes a very easy way to address this is to bring in somebody with fresh eyes and just do a walk through the building, the outside, the inside, and see, of course, the first impressions on the outside. Are there any overgrown trees or things you're just not seeing anymore if you've been there for a while? And then on the inside, is the signage up to date? All of that kind of stuff that you may not notice anymore, but you bring in somebody from the outside can see that really quick. Then take them out to lunch and make them, or have them share that list with you of maybe some things you can address. Turn it over to your buildings committee, whatever it is, and get to work on it. Kyle?
Yeah, and I think one of the things about buildings is they can become overwhelming at times. If you look at everything that needs to be done, right, it can be debilitating because you can look at it. I mean, in many churches, there are probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of work that could be done. I think the key is to start small, start with something that you can do and build momentum at a time. I mean, so, it's amazing what just a fresh coat of paint does in a classroom. Some wall art, something small, it can really help refresh a space without spending just a ton of money to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe even consider it kind of like the debt snowball. Make your list, maybe from cheapest to most expensive, and just start knocking things off. Number two is evangelism. And I love what you said. As long as there are folks in your community who don't know Christ, your work of evangelism isn't done. And so, as long as there's people that Jesus died for in your neighborhood, you have a job to do. And so let's talk about kind of addressing the ongoing revitalization in regards to evangelism. And I hope you make Dr. Matt Queen proud. Good luck.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I think there's always room to ask: is the evangelism strategy that our church has effective? Is it, do we have people involved in it? Is it simple enough that preschoolers to senior adults can understand it? And whatever that strategy is, whether that's going out door to door, whether that's training your people to be on mission at work, whatever. The reality is that strategies over time, and especially if you're using programs that have been put out recently, those can grow stagnant. And so it's always good just to ask, is this effective? Is there anything we can tweak to help our people live more evangelistic lives, to help live their lives on mission, and to continue sharing the truth of the gospel with the folks in our communities? It doesn't mean you have to revamp everything every 6 months, but I do think it's good to just ask the question, what needs to be tweaked? Where are these areas where things are going really well? Where are the things that we're not hitting, whatever, if you call them goals, or where we're just not hitting the mark of what we want to be as an evangelistic church?
Yeah. And another pro tip here, I guess, is we are coming up on Christmas.
Yep.
And so this would be a great time maybe to have some kind of a Christmas program at your church or some kind of a Christmas event, whatever it might be, something simple that yes, the whole come and see thing is not a long-term evangelism strategy, but it's a great get your toe wet strategy. If your people can learn that they're not going to actually get like consumed by a monster if they invite somebody to church, then maybe that first step, then they might can take a next step into telling them their testimony, and then maybe sharing the full gospel and so forth. And so sometimes just starting a conversation with a lost person is like the first step that will lead to so many more, because they'll find out that these aren't like some kind of unicorn in the wild, that these are normal people that Jesus loved, and they can have a conversation with them, and it doesn't have to be super weird. And so having something, either a Christmas dinner or a Christmas concert or something around this season, Christmas tree lighting where you're going to be up there and sharing the gospel, whatever it might be, something easy that people would want to come to, and then send your folks out to invite. And that's a good kind of first step. Second step is just hire Dr. Matt Queen to come and teach your people how, if you're not going to equip them, bring in Dr. Queen. He can do it.
Yeah.
Kyle?
And I think there's an important thing that you mentioned. That is, we're coming up on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Those two holidays present opportunities for low hanging fruit for evangelism, where, like you said, I mean, you do a candlelight service, folks will show up because they want to be a part of the Christmas celebration. Thanksgiving dinners. If your church does any kind of like Thanksgiving baskets, I mean, there's some really, really simple evangelism strategies here that can be very effective as we come up to the holidays. So be sure to not neglect the low hanging fruit that's there, especially this time of year.
Number 3, this goes hand in hand with evangelism, because it's all like, one side of a two-sided coin. So you got discipleship, right? So we tell people about Jesus, get them saved, and then what? And we need to have a process. We need all of that. And I like how you point out that some of our strategies can also grow stagnant over time. If your discipleship strategy is ultimately just come to Sunday school where you're going to learn a little more and that kind of deal, that might need a little refreshing and at least some more intentionality with it. So let's talk about discipleship. That's your third one, discipleship. Take us there.
Yeah. So what I would say is you don't have to always be chasing the newest discipleship strategy that's available at Lifeway or Mardell's, or the newest book that's published. You don't have to chase that. Find something that works in your context, whether that's a curriculum that you use, whether that's an informal, just kind of meeting over and going through scripture, whatever works in the rhythm and the culture of your church. Find something and use it to make disciples. But just like evangelism, you have to go back and reevaluate that from time to time and ask, okay, how is this strategy, whatever our strategy is, how is that helping people grow more like Christ? How is that helping equip them to share their faith? How is it helping them to live as believers in a world where there's so much uncertainty? How are we equipping our people to live on mission in their workplaces and in their schools? And these are good questions to ask, a couple of times a year, and just see, much like an evangelism strategy, is there something that we need to revamp? You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and restart over every 6 months. In fact, I would say that's not healthy either. But you do need to evaluate and see what you can tweak to help your discipleship strategy grow. And like you said, I mean, this does go hand in hand with the evangelism side of things as well, because it's 1B of the walk of faith, right? You want to get them saved, but then you want to help them grow in their faith. And the reality is, we have a lot of people in our churches that have never been discipled in a meaningful way other than Sunday school, or come into worship. Oh, well, yeah.
But yeah, and a pro tip here, again, timely, because November, December, January, people are going to have their New Year's resolutions, all of that kind of stuff. This may be a great time to consider a church-wide, maybe memory verse memorization, scripture verse memorization, a Bible through the year type plan where, or at least a weekly reading that y'all are going to read together as a church, and then maybe throughout the week you could send some devotional thoughts about a text. It is another level of work, but that's part of your job as equipping the saints for the work of ministry, discipling them, and so forth. And so think through some ways that in the new year you can kind of re-engage your people into the Word of God, and so maybe that's the reading plan, maybe that's a scripture memory, whatever it might be. Think of some ways in the start of the year to kind of harness people wanting to be more active at church or read through the Bible, whatever it might be, and help them through it and encourage them to stick with it. Number 4, teams and or committees. I want to go ahead and give you my pro tip. End them all. Every single one. Talk to us about teams and or committees.
Yeah. So I think the big point here is that teams and committees are wonderful servants of your church. They are terrible masters.
Amen.
And when you get churches and they're in need of revitalization, a lot of times what you'll have are a church that was, say, at one point 250 people has dwindled down to about 50, and yet they still have the same number of teams or committees that they had when they were at 250. And so what you have are multiple people serving in multiple roles, which can lead to burnout in a hurry. If you have folks that are attending 4, 5, 6 committee meetings a month, that can burn them out quickly. On the flip side of that, if you're a church that's in the growth stage, and this would apply to say church plants, and as you begin to grow, you still have the same number of teams and committees that you had when you were 40, and now you're 150. You probably need to rethink that as well, because the same thing can happen. There can be a lot more burden, a lot more work put on people serving on those teams that you could spread across multiple teams. So again, this is something that's good to evaluate probably once a year, just to go back and ask, okay, are the teams that we have effective? Are the committees that we have serving their purpose? And I understand a lot of times, ministry teams or committees are probably written into the bylaws of the church. So sometimes changing those means changing your bylaws. And I would say it's absolutely worth it if in order to set those up. So I remember what we did in Alamogordo. I think we had kind of a couple of set committees, like the personnel and finance. We knew that would be one for always and forever. Then we had a church council. We knew that would be one always and forever. But beyond that, there were no other real committees that were set in stone. And so we had the ability to, kind of form some teams, dissolve teams if we needed to. But you don't want to be a church whose structure is defined by a church reality from the past, right? So you don't want to be, you don't want to have your church structure that says, well, we have to have these 10 committees, but we only have 50 people to staff them. And likewise, you don't want to say, well, we only have these committees, and yet we need more. Again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. These are wonderful servants. Teams, committees, if they're done well, they will serve your church well. They will help you accomplish your purpose. They will help you do ministry well. But if they are the thing that drives your church, it can lead to burnout in a hurry and a whole lot of frustration on your part as pastor and on church members as well.
All right. I already gave you the pro tip on that one. Just cut them all.
Yep.
Cut them all out. I'm just kidding. But the final thing, I want to add a number 5. And I want to ask everybody that's listening right now, as soon as this is over, leave us a 5-star review. We haven't asked anybody to do that in a minute, but anyway, you can do that. Visit swibbits.edu, visit our sponsors. But the other third thing that we want to give you to do for a little bit of homework is right now, right when you're done, go to your church website, your church Facebook, and if your church has a Twitter, go to your Twitter, all your social media, all of your website, all of that kind of stuff. I want you to make sure right now that on the very front page that you're going to see as soon as you load that website, your address and the times that you gather. right? You can add some more information, all that kind of stuff. And yes, your calendar needs to be updated, all of those kinds of things too. But I've just found when either where it's somewhere that I'm preaching or somewhere we're going to visit, that I am like digging through the website to find the address or to find the time to worship. And so a quick, easy way to do that is whatever your cover photo is on Facebook or Twitter, have it in there. So if it's your sermon series banner or a picture of your church, we welcome you. We hope to see you at 11 a.m. and then whatever the address is. On your Twitter banner, same thing. On your website, just make sure that very first thing or that very first screen that you see before they have to start searching and looking and all of that kind of stuff is your address. I only say that is clearly a reaction to the churches that I've looked at websites here lately. And so just make sure that is very easily accessible because that's usually going to be the very kind of that front door of your church. And so people are going to find your church by Facebook. You put that ad up there, or people find it when they search for a church in your area that they need to find out right away where you are, when they need to be there. And maybe you can have some frequently asked questions about what do I wear? What kind of Bible should I bring? All that kind of stuff too, sure. But make sure it's easy to find where you gather and when. Kyle, any other final thoughts before we send it out?
No, that's good. I agree 100% with what you said about the website. The big thing is just to take a look around at how you're operating on a regular basis and ask what needs to be revamped, what needs to be tweaked to help share the gospel more effectively with your neighborhood. All
right. Well, until next time, and the Astros win their second World Series, may your coffee be as black as Kyle's soul and as bold as my prediction. Have a great day. Take care.
What's wrong with you people?